Well, good evening, everybody. I hope you all have had a good evening so far, and Lord willing, we'll have a good little bit of. All right, I think we've got everything set up and ready to go now. Tonight, again, I do want to just thank everybody that is online for being online with us, and just want to give you all encouragement. This isn't hopefully going to last forever. I hope and pray that before too much longer, we'll be able to be back in the church again and be able to worship in our normal service times and in our normal service ways. But until then, like I said this morning, the good Lord has given us the opportunity to at least be able to come together and to be able to praise Him through worship in an online format. And we'll just enjoy this as long as we have to, with the understanding that, Lord willing, it's not going to be forever. Tonight we're going to be in Isaiah chapter 51. And as we look at chapter 51, I guess one of the things that kept coming to my mind as I read this is this is God's assurance that He's going to deliver the nation of Israel. This is one of the ways where He sits down and he really talks one-on-one with those who are in captivity, those that are hoping to be returned back to the nation of Israel and to Jerusalem. And this is sort of where he just really gives some insight into what his plan is for the future of the nation of Israel. And as we look at that, there's three things that we're going to see that sort of comes up as a theme here. One of them is listen. God sometimes has to tell us that we need to stop, that we need to be quiet, and that we need to listen to Him. There's also two other things that we hear, and that's wake up. One is being Isaiah, the nation of Israel, looking at God and saying, wake up. Have you fallen asleep on us because of us being in captivity, because of us being in this bondage we're in? God, we need you to wake up and listen to us. But the other wake up comes when God then answers Isaiah, and He says, I'm not the one that's been asleep. You all have fallen asleep. So the nation of Israel is the one that needs to wake up also. And to me, that's sort of that theme that we see is listen and wake up in chapter 51. Now, we have to again remember that Isaiah is looking here at things that are in the future. These aren't things that's going on right now, but it's things that are to come. And we've already seen where he's predicted the Babylonian captivity. He has also predicted that they will be released by King Cyrus. And God is still speaking to those people who are faithfully following Him, that remnant that's going to return back to Jerusalem. And that remnant, or those faithful that God is talking about here, are those who are still depending on God's leadership and God's guidance in their lives. They've not given up hope. They've not given up their faith. And they're still looking for God to direct them even when they're in captivity. And because of that, God gives them this special message, this good news. And He says that your nation will be restored in the future. Now, I've broken this down into about 3 or 4 different sections, and we'll go through each of these sections tonight and sort of look at how God is speaking to the nation of Israel through these 3 sections. The first section we find is verses 1 through 8. And it says, listen to me, you who pursue righteousness, you who seek the Lord. Look to the rock from which you were hewn, and to the quarry from which you were dug. Look to Abraham your father, and to Sarah who bore you, for he was but one when I called him, that I might bless him and multiply him. For the Lord comforts Zion. He comforts all of her waste places and makes her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the gardens of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the voice of song. Give attention to me, my people, and give ear to me, my nation, for a law will go out from me, and I will set my justice for a light to the peoples. My righteousness draws near, my salvation has gone out, and my arms will judge the peoples. The coastlands hope for me, and for my arm they wait. Lift up your eyes to the heavens and look at the earth beneath, for the heavens vanish like smoke. The earth will wear out like garment, and they who dwell in it will die in like manner. But my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will never be dismayed. Listen to me, you who know righteousness, the people in whose heart is my law. Fear not the reproach of man, nor be dismayed at their revilings. For a moth will eat them up like a garment, and the worm will eat them like wool. But my salvation will be forever, and my salvation to all generations. Here we go. This is the first listen that we find. Listen to me, you who pursue righteousness. Again, when we look at this, God is speaking to those who are still following his guidance, those who are seeking him out. And when he talks to them about this, he's saying that look, I understand that there are some who have fallen by the wayside, some who have decided they're going to follow the Babylonian gods, some who have intermarried with other races, and those are the ones who had defiled what it is God had called them to be as a pure race. There will be those who simply won't go back to Jerusalem because they've grown accustomed to Babylon, and there are those that's just not going to be obedient to God, but God is speaking specifically to those who are seeking his guidance and his will while they're still being held in Babylonian captivity. And what is he telling them? What is he saying to listen and to look to? Well, he says to look for the rock from which you were hewn and to the quarry from which you were dug. He's basically saying, don't ever forget where you came from. There are life's lessons, there are experiences, there are things that you learn as you grow, either by family or by friends or by circumstances we find ourselves in. Those are things that are going to make us and mold us into who we are. But we started from somewhere. And that's what God is saying. Don't ever forget where it is that you got your start, where it is you came from. And God is basically saying here is that look, you are God's chosen people. And as God's chosen people, we have a purpose and a plan for the redemption story that you're going to be involved in. So don't ever forget where you came from. Well, where is it that the nation of Israel came from? He goes on to say, look to Abraham your father and to Sarah who bore you. For he was but one when I called him, that I might bless him and multiply him. Well, when we look at this, he's saying that I had a covenant relationship that I entered into with Abraham. And what was that covenant? The covenant is that the nation of Israel would be like the numbers of grains of sand, that they would multiply and that they would be able to inhabit the earth as a numerous population. But we have to go and look at Abraham at this time. Abraham was elderly. Abraham and Sarah had not been able to have any children up to this point. And God is saying, even though you're in advanced years, even though physically this should not be able to happen, you are going to bear children, and not only bear children, but I'm going to replenish the earth or multiply your numbers and bless you because of your righteousness. And I find it interesting. Can you imagine as you were Abraham and as you were Sarah, and you're standing there thinking, but we're just an old man and a barren woman. how is it that God is going to use us? And we know the story of what occurred when Sarah heard this, and she said, I understand that God has plans for you, but I'm old and I'm barren, and there's no way that I can conceive. So you take my handmaid, and when you take her, she will be the one that will provide you with the seed. And we know that through this, Ishmael was born. And when Sarah became pregnant, then she sent her handmaid Hagar off with Ishmael and sort of put them into exile. And because of that, because Ishmael was truly the firstborn, was the one who, according to Jewish custom, should have been the one that was the rightful inheritant to what Abraham had, there was that division that came between Ishmael and between Abraham and Sarah, and it still exists to this day. Here's one of the important things I think we need to take from this. When God tells us something, we don't need to take it into our own hands to try to help God. God has a purpose, He has a plan, He has a will, He has a way, and we need to learn to be patient, to be still, and to be able to just come to a point to where we are patient enough to wait on God to follow through with what His plan is and not try to manipulate it ourselves. We find, though, that we know that Abraham and Sarah were blessed with a child, and God was going to see the nation of Israel built up off of this child. And if God could take this old man and this old barren woman and could create the nation of Israel from it, then God is giving them the promise that He is going to see the nation of Israel returned and restored back to the initial glory that He had planned for it, and that this barren wasteland, all of this desolation and destruction that had taken place in Jerusalem, that it would be rebuilt from something that was just torn apart into a mighty nation once again. For the Lord comforts Zion, He comforts all of her waste places and makes her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the voice of song. Again, He's going to restore the nation of Israel back into the place where He had intended. Now notice He starts off with, listen. Now He's saying, give your attention to me. How many of us have had kids and we go to them and we say, now I want you to listen. I want you to listen. And over time, you have to get their attention. And I think this is where God is at. He's saying, now, I've asked you to listen, but now I want you to sit down and pay attention to me. He says, give attention to me, my people, and give ear to me, my nation. For a law will go out from me, and I will set my justice for a lights to the people. My righteousness draws near, my salvation has gone out, and my arms will judge the peoples. The coastlands hope for me, and for my arm they wait. Now again, we're not speaking of the specific point in time here that Isaiah is speaking, but we're looking at the future when we're going to be seeing the restoration of the nation of Israel after Christ's coming. And He's saying that, look, I need you to listen to me. There's going to be a time where you're not going to have any choice. You're going to have to sit down and listen to me, because there will be a time where justice will be given out. That justice will be what is meted to all the other people. And He says, my righteousness draws near, my salvation has gone out, and my arms will judge the people. When Christ comes back to earth, there's one thing that we have to understand. Righteousness is not going to be but for a short period of time after that. Salvation has been extended from the time that sin entered this world. And again, we know that after that that rapture, that there's going to be a short period of time before Christ's second coming. And he's just saying, look, things are going to be happening quickly. They're going to be sort of morphing in a quick period of time, and everything's going to be shortened. So my righteousness and my salvation that's already gone out, these are things that as we look at them, it's not going to last for much longer. And there's going to be this judging of the people. The coastlands, it sort of speaks of everybody from the east to the west, and that they'll be hoping to see him so they can get some deliverance. And he goes on in verse 6 to say, lift up your eyes to the heavens and look at the earth beneath, for the heavens vanish like smoke. The earth will wear out like a garment, and they who dwell in it will die in like manner. But my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will never be dismayed. God is just going in here again to encourage the nation of Israel that, look, the things you're going through right now are temporary. The things that you are seeing, that they won't last forever. But there are something that we can see that lasts forever, and that is salvation. And I love you so much that I'm providing you a way through salvation when Jesus Christ will come into the world hundreds of years later. Listen to me, you who know righteousness, the people in whose heart is my law. Fear not the reproach of man, nor be dismayed at their revilings. For the moth will eat them up like a garment, and the worm will eat them like wool. But my righteousness will be forever, and my salvation to all generations. Now again, we see righteousness and salvation being repeated here, and he's wanting them to have that encouragement that he is going to save them from this place that they find themselves in now, this bondage in Babylon. And he's trying to tell them that this is for you as the believers, my righteous people. This is what you need to understand, that people, these nations that have taken you captive, they're only going to be for a short period of time. Then we're going to see you back into a restoration, a time of being restored, a time of being rebuilt, and a time of this power that rises back to you again. But one of the things that we see coming in verses 9 through 16 is a change from God speaking to those who are righteous now to those who are righteous, and Isaiah speaking to God. In 9 through 16 it says, awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. Awake as in days of old and generations of long ago. Was it not you who cut Rahab in pieces, who pierced the dragon? Was it not you who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, who made the depths of the sea a way for the redeemed to pass over? And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. I am he who comforts you. Who are you that you are afraid of man who dies, of the Son of Man who is made like grass? And having forgotten the Lord your Maker, who stretched out the heavens and laid the foundations of the earth, and you fear continually all the day because of the wrath of the oppressor, when he sets himself to destroy. And where is the wrath of the oppressor? He who is bowed down shall speedily be released. He shall not die and go down to the pit, neither shall his bread be lacking. I am the Lord your God, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roars, and the Lord of hosts is his name. And I have put my words in your mouth and covered you in the shadow of my hand, establishing the heavens and laying the foundations of the earth, and saying to Zion, you are my people. So we see this little bit of almost like a Isaiah and the Jews feeling like God has fallen asleep on the job, that he no longer is seeing them through this trial and tribulation that they're going through, and they issue this sort of command: God, we need you to wake up. Not only do we need you to wake up, but we need you to come into this situation that we're in the strength and in the might that we know that you have. because we remember what we were taught back when we were released from Egypt, the Red Sea that was parting and the dry land that we crossed on. God, we remember these things. Was it not you who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, who made the depths of the sea a way for the redeemed to pass over? So they're saying we remember what we were taught. We understand that you delivered us from Egypt and through the Red Sea. So, God, we need you to work mightily in us tonight, today, in the near future. We are desperate and we need some relief. Again, they're accusing God of sleeping. They think that their heavenly Father is taking a 5 o'clock nap while they were still suffering in captivity. And as Isaiah calls out to God to deliver his people from this captivity, just as he had delivered them from Egypt, we see that God answers him. God gives him the answer that he is looking for. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion or Jerusalem with singing. Everlasting joy shall be on their heads. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. God just looks at Isaiah and says, whoa, wait a minute. I've not been asleep. You have to understand that because of your disobedience that you all have been punished. I've put you in time out. And it's not that I have left you, it's not that I have gone to sleep, but there is a time where I have to allow you to go through your period of punishment. But when it ends, when everything is all said and done, I'm going to see you returned back to what is rightfully yours, there to Jerusalem. And he goes on to say, I'm going to set you free from your captivity and from all of the suffering that you have experienced. Now, notice what he says. I am he who comforts you. Who are you that you are afraid of man who dies, of the Son of Man who is made like grass? He just goes back in to say, wait a minute, it's been a short period of time that you have gone from remembering my might and my power to you disobeying what I have given the prophets. You have overextended my patience. Now that you're in captivity, you're trying to say that your punishment is my fault. We're not going to have that. I want you to understand that even in this time of tribulation that you're going through, I'm still the one that provides you with your comfort, because I am going to see you released. I am going to see you returned. I am going to see the nation restored. There's no reason for you to worry over something that man is doing, because I oversee everything that man does. Have you forgotten the Lord your Maker, who stretched out the heavens and laid the foundation of the earth? And you fear continually all the day because of the wrath of the oppressor, when he sets himself to destroy. And where is the wrath of the oppressor? He who is bowed down shall speedily be released. He shall not die and go down into the pit, neither shall his bread be lacking. He's basically saying here, look, I'm the one that set all of this into motion. I'm the one that from the foundation of time knew that you would be in this position. I'm the one that placed you in captivity. But if I placed you into captivity, then I can rescue you from captivity also. And for those of you who truly believe today in Jesus Christ and in the God who orchestrated all of these things, if your faith is still in God, if you're still following my laws and my commands, then you will be released. Now, if you notice, he goes on to say, shall not die and go into the pit, neither shall his bread be lack. And he speaks of that eternal salvation. He speaks of those who are faithful in following him all the way through and their eternal salvation that's there. I am the Lord your God who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. The Lord of hosts is his name, and I have put my words in your mouth and covered you in the shadow of my hand, establishing the heavens and laying the foundations of the earth, and saying to Zion, you are my people. God's basically saying, I am not asleep. I am awake. I have not forgotten you, but I am preparing you to be returned back to the nation of Israel, to restore Jerusalem back to where it rightfully should have been. Today, we see him doing the same thing. In 2020, we know that God is still working in our lives, and he is preparing a place for us as believers in heaven. Now, notice it says another wake up here. In verses 17 through 23, we see a change. And if we remember, when we go back up into 9, he says, awake, awake. They're calling out to God. But when we look at verse 17, wake yourself. Wake yourself, stand up, O Jerusalem, you who have drunk from the hand of the Lord the cup of his wrath, who have drunk to the dregs the bowl, the cup of staggering. There is none to guide her among all of the sons she has borne. There is none to take her by the hand among all the sons she has brought up. These two things have happened to you. Who will console you? Devastation and destruction, famine and sword. Who will comfort you? Your sons have fainted. They lie at the head of every street like an antelope in a net. They are full of the wrath of the Lord and rebuke of your God. Therefore hear this, you who are afflicted, who are drunk but not with wine. Thus says your Lord, the Lord, your God, who pleads the cause for his people. Behold, I have taken from your hand the cup of staggering. The bowl of my wrath you shall drink no more, and I will put it in the hands of your tormentors. As I find the rest of that verse, I think what we have to see here is God has changed what it is he is saying. God has changed his words. He's no longer looking at the nation of Israel that's looking at him and saying, wait a minute, God, you need to wake up. But what we find is that God is then looking at them and saying, it wasn't me that was asleep. Israel, you have accused me of something that wasn't true. It wasn't me that was asleep, but Israel, it was you that fell asleep at the wheel. And I think that this is something that we have to remember, even in our own lives today. There are times where we feel like God isn't present in our lives, where we feel like maybe God may be asleep and he's not answering questions. He's not seeing us through the way that we want to be seen through. And sometimes we may even look at God and say, God, we need you to wake up. We need you to intercede in our lives. And I think there's times where God turns around and looks at us and says, wait a minute, I'm not the one that was asleep. You were the one that went to sleep on me. Now, what we find is that Jerusalem is being sort of compared to a mother who has lost all of her children, either in death or in captivity, because it speaks here of her children, her sons. And it says that she is so distraught that it's almost like she's stumbling around drunk. There was no one left to provide for her needs. The nation of Israel, as we know, was in, or at least Jerusalem, it was invaded by other people. They had taken over. They had destroyed everything that was there. And this is that bit of an semblance here that God is trying to show them that as a nation, that there has been so much destruction that they really don't know how to act anymore. But not only that, it says that even though the destruction came, there wasn't anybody there to prevent this from happening. There's none to guide her among all of the sons she has born. There is none to take her by the hand among all the sons that she has brought up. They've either died or they've been taken into captivity. And we see this as being where we find the Israelites during their period of captivity, that some of them were killed and others were carried off. And because of that, there was nobody at the helm directing the nation of Israel. These two things have happened to you. Who will console you? Devastation and destruction, famine and sword. Who is it that will comfort you? Basically, what God is saying is that you have come through a hardship. You have come through a time where we know that the nation is not as God had intended it to be, but it's time to pull it all together. It's time for you to realize that this is a temporary thing, and it's time for us to get over this shock and awe, this staggering around like a drunk person, because the nation was surprised that God did what he said he would do by allowing them to go into captivity, by punishing them for this 70-year period of time. And it's almost like you can see the nation of Israel saying, God, we understood that that's what you said, but we really didn't mean or didn't think that you meant it, that we really didn't think that you would follow through with it. But again, he provides comfort. Therefore, hear this, you who are afflicted, who are drunk, but not of wine. Thus saith your Lord, the Lord, your God. Now notice the three theme. Your Lord, the Lord, your God. He again is establishing his authority to the nation of Israel. And he's saying, through my authority, I am pleading the cause of you, my people, my nation, those who turned their back against me. I am pleading to you, and I am telling you, I have taken from your hand this wrath, this cup of staggering, this bowl of wrath, and you will drink no more. There will be a short period of time where you go through this period of wandering in captivity. But the 70 years will soon pass. That will be taken away. And once that time is taken away, then we're going to see the nation of Israel restored back to where they should be. So when the nation of Israel is restored, what's going to happen to those who took them into captivity? Well, in verse 23, he says, and I will put it into the hands of your tormentors who have said to you, bow down that we may pass over. And you have made your back like the ground and like the street for them to pass over. Those who are in captivity are going to find themselves freed and returned back to Jerusalem. And there's going to be a new beginning. There's going to be a new life. There's going to be a new start of their family. There's going to be a new nation that is established through this remnant. But those who had taken them captive, would be overthrown, and they would experience what it was like to be captives. Again, God is just saying to the nation of Israel, I warned you that your disobedience would end in punishment. I tried to send you these warnings over and over. You continue to refuse what it is that I ask of you. Because of that, you left me no choice but to punish you. But even though I have punished you by allowing you to be taken into captivity, I still have a purpose, I still have a plan, I still have a will, and I'm going to see that carried out in the reestablishment of the nation of Israel, and with the reestablishment of the Israelites and the nation as a whole, and with the reestablishment of the relationship that God had with the nation of Israel. All right, with that, I'm going to open it up for the next 4 or 5 minutes. Are there any questions or any comments on tonight's lesson on Isaiah 51? All right, if not, I sure appreciate everybody coming out to listen tonight. I appreciate you all still having the desire to study and to listen to God's word, even though we're not in the corporate setting of the church right now. And again, I pray that God will restore us back to a place where we'll be able to be back in the church and worshiping together here in a short period of time. But until then, God bless you. And Lord willing, we will see you back at 6:30 on Wednesday evening, back on Zoom, and we'll be covering the last portion of Philippians chapter 4. I think it's verses 11 through about 23. Have a good evening, everyone. God bless.